We're here under Tunsgate Arch to get two local views on the Brexit situation. And who better to ask than the 2016 campaign organisers for the Remain and Leave campaigns in Guildford, David Pillinger, a Remainer, and Christian Holliday, a Leaver. Gents, thank you for coming to this drafty spot this morning. Christian, as Guildford as a constituency voted to Remain, weren't the majority right to think that from a Guildford perspective we'd be better to remain? What would be better for Guildford if we left?
No, I don't think that's the right assessment, actually. I think Guildford has many world-leading industries, and I think we do very well outside of the EU. I think we're stuck in this rut at the moment where we think that all of our growth and our abilities are tied to the EU. I think we've got so many international class industries that we can do very well outside. If we do leave, from Guildford's perspective, I think there's a great opportunity to take pressure off the housing market. Current house prices in Guildford are 12 times national salaries. And if we leave the EU, that would certainly take the pressure off. Immigration has been a big issue in the campaign and also in local services. You can barely use an A road in the southeast of England efficiently these days. So it's a chance to put a cap on immigration and have a think about how we deal with that and how we accommodate the people who are already here. So there's two good reasons there for Guildford to not fear leaving the EU.
And David, do you think it would really be that bad if we did leave? Haven't a lot of the disadvantages been exaggerated?
Well, the UK used to be a basket economy when I was a kid. It was a kind of no-hope kind of place. I even remember Italy taking over in GNP per head. France was ahead, Germany was ahead, and everybody was ahead. But we were still here, sure, we'll still be here. Since then, we've joined the EU. We've had some fantastic liberalising reforms by Mrs. Thatcher, and they're not interfered with by Tony Blair. And the place runs like clockwork at the moment. Take away some of the efficiencies, and some of the companies here which are extremely international. The research park is full of fledgling companies and quite well-established companies who depend on free movement of goods, services, capital. The big multinationals are here, Ericsson, Palmolive, etc., Alliance. Losing that flexibility is quite a serious thing. A company has, this much cost and hopes to have a little bit more revenue. You fiddle about with that, and you're affecting things badly. There are a number of companies which are already losing contracts or not being allowed to bid. And the reason is that we're not going to be in the single market. I can't say who they are. You may know who they are, and certainly our MP knows who they are. Okay. And it's not good news for them.
Okay. Christian, the government is running out of time and options. Is there anything the Prime Minister can get added to the deal she has secured that would make it acceptable to you?
The main problem with the deal at the moment is the Northern Ireland backstop. It splits Northern Ireland off from Great Britain. And indeed, Dominic Raab, the former Brexit secretary, said that was the plan all along. That the price Britain would have to pay for Brexit would be losing Northern Ireland. Now, clearly that's not acceptable to the Conservative and Unionist Party, certainly not acceptable to the DUP, and certainly not acceptable to most Labour MPs, actually. So that would have to come out, or there would have to be specific legal guarantees within the agreement to bring the backstop to an end or give us the unilateral right to leave. The fact is the EU has made it very clear that isn't going to happen. The deal itself is not open to negotiation. She's welcome to keep trying, and I wish her all the best with that, but the reality is the odds are against that. So at the moment, that's going to stay. That makes the deal unacceptable.
Okay. And what is your view of the negotiated deal, David? Would you find it acceptable, or are you pinning all your hopes on a second referendum?
Well, I think negotiating Brexit is almost an impossibility. It's full of inconsistencies. The Brexiteers like borders, but they don't want a border with one bit of the EU island. They want free trade and all that stuff, but they want to close the country to the free movement of capital, goods and people with the countries that are richest in the world and next door to us where it's very, very easy to do trade. And they also tell us that Britain can negotiate better as a little standalone country. No, it won't. we can negotiate better, as we've always done, as members of the EU. So I don't think either May's deal or any deal will be good. A second referendum will allow people who now understand what Brexit means to make a proper decision and not base it on, let's face it, a load of fanciful comments that were made in 2016.
Okay, but don't you think that if the original referendum result is not respected and we don't leave the EU, many will completely lose faith in our democracy?
Well, you know, it's a really complex thing. I absolutely agree. It's a risky thing. But what are you going to do? Are you going to allow things to go forward in this sort of shambolic way that's going to make us all worse off? Or are you going to say to the people, well, now that you've had 2 years of facts, we now know what it's going to look like. Now you decide again. You know, you decide whether, it is in fact worth paying 350 million quid a week to the EU, when that's actually a very, very small figure and goes to fund an enormous amount of effort and benefits that this country gets.
And Christian, isn't a people's vote actually the only way to settle this now? Parliament seems to be stuck.
Well, the reason we gave the vote to the general public is because Parliament was always divided and out of touch with the people on this issue. Parliament doesn't actually have to think very hard about this at all because the decision has been made. Leave means leave, to coin a phrase. And at the time, David Cameron made it very clear that that meant leaving the single market, as did the Vote Leave campaign. In one interview, I think it was with Sky News, David Cameron said 14 times it would mean being outside the single market. So we knew what we were voting for, and to put that back to the people again would be unprecedented. Every referendum we've ever had in this country has been implemented, whether that's devolution for Scotland and Wales or to say no to an assembly for the northeast of England. So to set a precedent now that the votes of 17.4 million people count for nothing is seriously dangerous. There were people who voted for the first time in their lives in that referendum, and that has to be honoured.
You have relaunched the Leave campaign. Is that because you think a second referendum is inevitable?
Well, Leave campaigners have kept in touch since 2016. Many of them have expressed frustration at the way the Brexit negotiations are going. They're not happy with the government's approach. Primarily, we saw it as a social activity, but if needs be, then we will be ready for any future campaigns that come along. But as I say, there'll be major issues with that as a principle, and it's not something we'd support.
And David, on the Remain side, are you ready to campaign too, if necessary?
Well, as Christian was saying, you know, the Remain network has kept in touch, and it's kind of grown bigger and established links with industry, with academia, with the NHS. Yes, I dare say, people would be ready to launch into a campaign again. I mean, obviously people are very busy, they have jobs. I fly in and out every week of the year at the moment on this particular assignment I'm doing, and I have to sort of fit it in with that, but certainly we'll be there.
And if there is another referendum, what options should be available to vote for, do you think?
Well, on the basis that people now know what this means, I think there should be an option of Remain. It's a very important one, and one that, our kids depend on, because let's face it, they'll be losing their freedom of movement. We should probably have some sort of defined deal, which the government and the two Brexit secretaries we've had have agreed with the EU. Well, one of them, I think, resigned, and the other one sort of threw the toys out of the pram and walked off as well. But that's what's been negotiated over 2 years nearly. And then the other one should be some other deal that a competing element of either the Conservative Party or a mix of MPs come up and define very, very clearly. You can't have this. If that's what they want to define, but you have to define it. People have to know that they're going to lose their freedom of movement, that industry is not going to have skills. We have to know all this stuff.
Okay. And what about you, Christian? What do you think? What are the options should be on the ballot paper if we do have a second referendum?
Well, we maintain there's no need for a second referendum. If there were, then it would be outrageous to have three options. That would be a blatant attempt to split the Leave vote between Leave with a deal and Leave with no deal. In fact, the question as to whether or not we leave has already been asked and answered in 2016. Any second question should therefore be, do we leave with a deal or do we leave without a deal? And leave it at that.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much for coming and giving your views this morning.
Thank you very much.